If I were called upon to speak about myself, Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Yahya ibn al-Saykh ibn Baya, which is my name in full, although the Christians know me as Avempace, I would venture to say, without fear of erring in my judgment, that I have always been given to reflection. I do not lie when I profess, especially now, at this mature stage of my life, that I take much more satisfaction from meditation and delving deep into the hidden meaning of things than in concerning myself with the hustle and bustle of mundane affairs. But despite my inclination to philosophize, my life has never been lacking in excitement. Over the course of my 50 years, I have cultivated a myriad skills pertaining to the body and the soul, and have excelled in all of them. In mathematics, geometry and astronomy, in music and poetry, in medicine as well, and above all in philosophy. In this field, rarely have I met my match. O merciful Allah, please forgive me if I seem too bold. Nor have I hesitated in hurtling myself into the frenzied whirl of human ambition. And this is what has driven me to my exile here in Fez, so far away from my beloved Sarakusta, place of my birth. Shortly before King Alfonso I of Aragon and Pamplona took Sarakusta, I was forced to leave and take refuge in the Moorish city of ATEVA. There, however, I was not well received. No sooner had I arrived than I was taken prisoner for political reasons. Fortunately, I was only incarcerated a short time, although I was forced to leave the city. I spent time in Almeria and Granada, where I was able to demonstrate my medical skills and my philosophical ideas, which were received with both honors and praise, as well as envy and disdain. From there I went to Oran, and finally to Fez, where I was none too short of enemies. The reason I believe I was forced into exile is the same reason that led to the fall of the mighty Caliphate of Cordoba. A kind of narrow-mindedness that ended up making our interests, our political disagreements, and our different religious and philosophical beliefs irreconcilable. But that is no reason for me to overlook the prosperity of these fertile lands of Hispania, brought about by the arrival of the dynasties that founded Al-Andalus and expanded its kingdoms. Although Al-Andalus was originally a province ruled by an emir under the authority of the Eastern Caliph, one of these emirs, Abderrahman III, soon proclaimed himself Caliph, or political and religious ruler, thus liberating Al-Andalus from Eastern rule. My ancestors brought with them new techniques of cultivating the fields, new systems of irrigation to make better use of the available water, a more comfortable and refined lifestyle, not to mention a new language and a new religion. And drawn by their prosperity and tolerance, the most erudite men of science and the arts, the most talented artists and artisans began to settle in the new caliphate. This wisdom was not only transmitted through the minds of scientists and philosophers, it was also preserved on a new material, paper. Owing to its low cost, as compared to the high-priced parchment used by the Christians, the well-stocked libraries of Cordoba amassed a huge collection totaling 500,000 books. Over the course of time, conflicts and bloody struggles arose within the Muslim community itself, which severed the ties that bound Cordoba to the most powerful cities on the peninsula. As a result, many of them declared their independence from the Caliphate of Cordoba and founded their own kingdoms, or taifas. Among these taifa kingdoms, Sarakusta was one of the most prominent, with domains stretching out over a vast territory. One of the great advantages of memories is that each person is free to conjure up the ones in which he takes the most delight. Perhaps that is why it is so easy for us to immerse ourselves in the sweet, idle pleasures of nostalgia. But it is not only my condition as an exile that brings me to recollect a more pleasurable past. There are also strong signs that link me to my past in Sarakusta, since, at the present time, oddly enough, many of the prevailing artistic trends in North Africa have their roots in this and other cities of the peninsula. One need look no further than the details of the addition to the mosque in this city of Fez. I come here often to pray and to relive, through its decorations, the splendor of the Al-Jaferia Palace, which I visited so many times while I was living in Sarakusta. Although memories do indeed have a tendency to fade with time, when I conjure up images of my erstwhile city, there before me stands, no doubt owing to my passion for geometry, a clear and indelible picture, an unmistakable and precise vision in which I take great pleasure. The ancient Visigothic city of Saraqusta, which embraced Islamic culture, was renamed Sarakusta. Using the ancient Roman layout, the Medina al-Baida was born, and next to the towers of the Christian churches, the minarets of the mosques appeared. Lying strategically near 3 rivers, abounding in palaces and baths, the city was so prosperous and attracted so many new settlers that the walled Medina soon proved to be inadequate. This gave rise to the growth of large settlements outside the city walls. Many were fully devoted to industries of all different kinds, such as leatherwork and sword making. The original inhabitants were never forced to convert to Islam. Christians and Jews, each in their own neighborhoods, lived in harmony with their new lords and with the Muladiyas, Christians who had embraced Islam. Their cemeteries of equal size were situated near the gates of the city. In the surrounding lands there were fertile gardens growing, fruit trees galore, fields of wheat and barley, vineyards and olive groves. During its heyday, the Taifa of Sarakusta witnessed the construction of the Al-Jaferia Palace on the outskirts of the city. Part fortress and part palace, the Al-Jaferia reflected the open and refined nature of the border town of Sarakusta at the time. The White City welcomed intellectuals who had fled the intolerance that took hold of other Moorish cities after the breaking up of the Caliphate of Cordoba. There was such a proliferation of educational centers that a powerful association of booksellers was established. But the new Moorish kingdoms had no qualms about struggling brutally with one another. Some even formed alliances with the neighboring Christian kingdoms, which had become more and more powerful. Thus, the city's governors thought nothing of contracting the services of warriors such as El Cid, who fought side by side with the Moorish kings on many occasions. This I can confirm, since my father, a highly reputed goldsmith by trade, received a commission from King Al-Muqtadir himself, who wished to present the Christian warrior with a gift. At that time, I was fully immersed in my passion for philosophy, wrapped up in the study of the profound insight of the teachings of a philosopher, Aristotle, who had lived in ancient times in the faraway lands of Greece. His teachings had come down to me through some obscure manuscripts, and I took it upon myself to disseminate these among my students and members of discussion groups, arousing their interest and, in some cases, admiration. It was one of the happiest times of my life. Both my work and my teachings were rooted in the Moorish city of Sarakusta, and they made up the most fruitful philosophical thought of the time. I also devoted time to the practice of medicine and all the branches of knowledge that my intellect was able to grasp, without neglecting the cultivation of my musical talents, although this also drew fierce criticism. Finally, I must confess that I could not resist the opportunities I was given to rise on the political front. It was with the arrival of the Almoravids that I was promoted to the important post of vizier by appointment of the new governor, Ibn Tiflwit. Under his rule and patronage, I carried out complicated diplomatic tasks from my privileged position. But it was not long before my privileges would vanish into thin air upon the death of my patron. Some of my enemies, closer than I to the new governor, accused me of heterodoxy for having given rational interpretations of the contents of the faith in my books and teachings. Others even went so far as to accuse me of heresy because, as they saw it, I had refused to accept the existence of life after death, and this only because I had stated that the only happiness that exists is to be found in this life. To top it all, there were rumors that the Christians were planning a possible attack on the city, and my situation worsened so quickly that I was forced to flee Sarakusta in haste. To avoid the destruction of my manuscripts, or what would have been worse, their being used against me by the new governors, I decided it would be unwise to bring them with me on my journey to Hativa, where I was planning to take refuge. Besides, I imagined that they would not be well received there either. So, the day before my departure, I decided to entrust them to my childhood friend and schoolmate, Said Al-Hassani. Oddly enough, the most vivid memory I have of my city has nothing to do with its opulent palaces or the lofty walls surrounding the Medina, but rather concerns something that happened to me that day, my last day in Sarakusta, in the Sinhaya quarter, where my friend Said Al-Hassani was working as a scribe. This image is so clear in my mind that I need not make any effort at all to relive the memory. Accompanied by one of my servants, and having packed my most precious manuscripts, I crossed the wall incognito and entered the quarter. I knew that Saeed Al-Hassani would be attending to his customers in his brother's little mat shop and that he would be waiting for me, as he had been informed of my arrival. Saeed Al-Hassani and I had grown up together. We had played together as children. Like a brother, he had sworn absolute loyalty to me. He would keep the manuscripts in a safe place, and I would find a way to get them back when the circumstances proved more propitious. However, the shop was too busy a place to store anything in the least bit compromising. Saeed urged me to leave the manuscripts at his house. We retraced our steps, going around the shop owner's house. I assumed him to be quite successful, as the floor of his abode was tiled in stone instead of ordinary brick. I also imagined that the patio to his house would be embellished with a lovely fountain or a small pool at the very least. Saeed led us to his house, which was only a short distance away. Saeed's house was like most others in the neighborhood. The entryway was set at an angle to protect the privacy of its inhabitants from indiscreet glances. At the end of the short hallway was the hearth where his wife cooked the meals. She was in the patio. It was then that the gentle strumming of a lute wafted down from the rooftop. Much to my surprise, I discovered that the musician was Momina, Saeed's eldest daughter. I only had a vague memory of her from when she was a child. Time had left its mark on both of us, although the effects were obviously very different. My astonishment heightened when I learnt that not only was the girl fully aware of the reason for my visit, she was the one who was to watch over my manuscripts, but that she had knowledge of their content. She immediately asked me to show them to her. I soon discovered that music was not the only natural talent that Momina possessed. Almost unawares, I found myself deep in discussion about what appeared to fascinate her most, my exposition on the writings of Aristotle. Forgetting the urgency of my visit, I continued conversing with Momina, who also showed great interest in the most abstruse notions of mathematics and astronomy. This unexpected intellectual complicity soon gave way to a deeper, more irrational feeling. My sentiments for Momina began to blossom from the bottom of my heart. That is to say, I was entranced by the sparkle of her eyes. So unwittingly, I found that these passionate philosophical exchanges began to warm into ardent outbursts of poetry, especially after I discovered that Momina was also practiced in the art of versification, a talent she demonstrated in the composition of beautiful poems comparable to the best verses that I had ever written, which, much to my delight, she knew and could recite perfectly. That night it pained me more than ever to have to leave Sarakusta. Yet I must confess that during those precious moments, only a few hours before my departure, I took much greater comfort in the unexpected complicity of this girl than in all the recognition I could ever have obtained from the most renowned scholars. May Allah put me to shame if what I say is not true. Nearly 20 years have passed since then, and now I know that I shall never again set eyes on Sarakusta. The little news I receive is none too heartening. Today I learnt that the man I loved like a brother, Said al-Hassani, died shortly after the Christians stormed the city. May Allah hold him in his glory. And not a word have I heard of the fascinating Momina, or of the manuscripts I entrusted to her. What I do know is that, unfortunately, ideas and knowledge do not usually flow peacefully from one place to another, or from one period to another. Rather, they are conveyed through winding roads full of pitfalls, marked more often than not by the dramatic changes brought about by wars and politics. They are no more and no less than the same arduous roads that we men must venture out upon to achieve our ambitions, or to avoid greater evil, as has been my case. Yet for me, this all belongs to the past now. I often imagine that the neighborhood has been wiped out by war, or the mere passing of time. At other times, remembering the gleam in Momina's eyes, I dream that the forgotten history and knowledge that once flourished in Sarakusta, my beloved city, will come to life again at some moment in the future.